Isaiah, first off, appreciate you coming on, man. I want to talk about now you're like coaching now. But I want to do that by going back a little bit. So like these tournaments, right? I think your first tournament you played was the Charleston one. You guys did your freshman year, and then you went to Maui, right? Were you on those teams?
Yeah.
So you can kind of talk about like what these preseason tournaments like do for a team, because like obviously, you win, you get in the tournament. You play back-to-back games. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it just helps build like the camaraderie for a team. Just spending time away from areas that you're really comfortable with, and then you guys are just kind of all isolated in a hotel together. It kind of helps bond the team together a little bit more than when you guys are actually able to go back to your own houses and apartments and dorms. So I think that it's big for bonding, and it's a great uniter.
Yeah, and I think that first year when you're in Charleston, you guys ended up winning the NIT, and you went on a run playing a bunch of games like that. You want to talk about winning the NIT and stuff with that?
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, I still feel like we got snubbed that year.
Yeah.
The Big 12 was a monster. It was a powerhouse that year, and it took us a while to really click as a unit and as a team, and we kind of showed it in the NIT that we got snubbed. We beat every team by 20 that we played. So
Yeah.
That was fun. But being able to play in Madison Square Garden with guys who are now my lifelong friends, and be able to share that memory with is awesome.
Yeah, and then the next year you end up losing the Big 12, and you lost in the Sweet 16, but you guys kind of made that run. Do you think that was like a big step for you guys to see like you guys can win and really go to that next level?
Yeah, I definitely feel that we had a chip on our shoulder that next season, especially with all the talent that we had. And we lost Pierre Jackson, but then we picked up a lot of other good players. We had Kenny Cherry.
Yeah.
He was awesome, awesome point guard, amazing human. I think that we just wanted to show people that even though we're looked at as the underdogs, that we weren't actually the underdogs. So we played our hearts out that year.
Yeah, and now with being a coach, I want to go back a little bit to your like recruiting process. Can you kind of talk about that with like Scott Drew, and how much it's changed from you being a coach now and seeing what players have to go through versus when you were getting recruited back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, my recruitment was a little bit different. I was #1 player in the country since I would say a sophomore.
Yeah.
I was #1 through 4. It just depending on the rankings. But I committed early. I committed at the end of my sophomore year. I just wanted to get it done. I wanted to focus on basketball. I wasn't into, being the most popular guy. I wasn't into, even back then, it wasn't a lot of social media that was going on. There was a little bit. It was gaining traction, but it wasn't a lot like it is now. There's barely Baller's Life was just now
they were just starting.
So. I think that my recruitment was a lot different than what we have to recruit now, and now is unfortunately the basketball space has become a lot of transactional love, and back then, I feel like it was transformational.
Yeah.
Especially for me, I wanted to be around people that I could trust. I wanted to be around people who I thought would be in my life for an extended amount of time, and not just for 1 year at a time. And I feel like now with the way college basketball is kind of placed, it's more transactional.
No, yeah, I would agree. And like, we have a lot of like high school, middle school athletes I watch. So like, what's the best piece of advice you would give to a kid that's trying to play, college sports and in the recruiting process?
I would say go where you're wanted. A lot of these kids are chasing money, and just from my experience, money will always be there. It's a materialistic item that unfortunately you need it, but at the same time, if you put your love and heart into this craft, then this craft will take care of you in the long run. So, I wouldn't chase the most amount of money, even though it could help you, just depending on your situation. And I'm not one to judge anybody for their decisions that they make. That's not my job. But if you want to play, I would say go somewhere where the coach is actually telling you that you're going to play.
And do you think like also like some people now when you're a freshman, you obviously have to wait your turn. Sometimes some guys come in, but do you think some guys like they jump the gun too early when they're really at a good situation, but they just don't realize that because they have to mature and grow as a player?
Yeah, I mean, especially now. I feel like guys have an okay season and then they get in the transfer portal, and then there's teams that are desperate that'll pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars late and then they go there and it's not as successful season as they would have thought, just because of, you know, they're going into a system that may not fit their style of play, or they're going into a coaching staff that may not have their best interests at heart. And you know, I just feel like if you put time into player development, you can grow anywhere. And the NBA has shown time and time again, especially now if you look at the league right now, there's so many guys that come from, you know, mid-majors and low majors that make it to the league and actually stick because they just kept putting one foot in front of the other and working on their development, and they weren't worrying about like the glitz and the glamours and the money on the front end. You know, they continued to go through the journey and enjoy the journey. Yeah,
I remember like when I was like still learning, I was telling you about how like you were one of the first eds. I mean, I always had this thing if I ever got a chance to ask you. Obviously, everybody's, you know, asks you a question about like with the NBA, but one thing I always wondered is that it very much takes like a very heavy mental toll. And how did you kind of get through that? And like, what did you like learn about yourself in that moment? Because like obviously it's, you know, it hurt, but like it takes a lot.
I think that one of the main things I learned is probably like I'm a lot stronger than what I thought I was, you know, and strength isn't always, you know, physical. It could be mental, it could be spiritual. And I learned that, you know, I had a lot of people in my circle that probably didn't need to be there at the time. So I learned what was important to me in life during that time, and that was, you know, having friends and family that loved me for me. And, you know, if I could go back and change it, I tell people all the time, like I wouldn't, because it just helped mold me into the man that I am today. And I believe that, you know, I'm a strong Christian. I believe that everything in my life happens for a reason, and that God put me on this path and on this journey to be able to help and impact others. And you know, I don't think that I would have had as big an impact on other people's lives if I would have made it to the NBA than, you know, I have had now.
And yeah, you get to help a lot of young men every day in their lives and this team. I do want to talk about like the playing career, because you get to go to a lot of places afterward. Can you kind of talk about the experience of going internationally and like learning about all these, you know, different cultures and getting to play in different basketball?
Yeah, it was some of the greatest years of my life, man. I mean, 5 years I spent overseas. My son was born in Belgrade, Serbia. You know, I got to experience so many different teammates, so many different cultures, languages, and just, you know, travel the world. And I feel like a lot of people don't get to travel the world. So I'm blessed to be able to have that opportunity to be able to play all around the world. And I think I touched 13 countries in the span of 5 years. And it was fun, man. I mean, it's like an exhilarating experience, like to just play in an arena where, you know, nobody's an NBA player, but, you know, the fans and the culture and the city is just 100% fully behind you.
Yeah.
You know, I've played in arenas where they have to sweep it for bombs because the basketball is so serious.
That's crazy.
And, you know, it was fun. It was really, really fun.
Do you think that kind of helped you as a coach going around all these different places and seeing different style of ball? Because I remember Rick Pitino talked about that when he spent his time in Greece. I wonder if that kind of helped you.
I mean, yeah, in a sense it does, man. I think the thing that has helped me most as a coach is the coaching staff that I'm surrounded by. I mean, you look at guys like Jordan Fee, who was, you know, a D2 head coach. He has the, you know, the most winningest flipped record, you know, in the history of the NCAA. I think he took his team from like 4-32 to 32-4, you know, in a span of a year. And then, you know, of course we have John as, you know, the head of the Snake, and then Aditya and Damon Parker and Aaron Smith, and then even our GAs, you know, have experience with Eric McClellan. So I think just being able to...
Eric was a great player at Gonzaga too, all the players, back in the day.
Yep. I think just being able to learn from them and try to be a sponge and know that I don't know everything about coaching, even though I was a basketball player, has helped me the most.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but John, when you were there, was he the GA there?
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about how you transitioned into coaching? Obviously, I think that probably had a major impact on that.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was working for the NBA. I was the director of player development at the league, and I was working underneath Adam Silver, and you know, I had a role that, you know, I probably could have worked for the rest of my life and did just fine for myself. But I just always felt that my life is meant to help others, and when John called me and asked for help, and he said that he wanted a former player on the staff, I just looked back at all the time that he sacrificed for me when he was a GA, you know, taking away time from his family and just spending hours on hours on hours on film and working me out and, just rebounding for me and just being there for me as a young man growing up in Waco. So, I wanted to kind of just pay it back to him.
Yeah. No, what I'm interested too is like, especially now, I feel like with like the whole NIL landscape where people have to, you're paying guys to play, and if it doesn't work out, it's almost like a professional sport. Like with scouting and stuff wise, like when you're looking at guys that you want to bring in, I feel like that's even more important, especially at a school like this where you don't necessarily have the budget of some other teams. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, high major budget. We're a mid-major school. That's just what the facts of it is. I just think that our coaching staff is great at maintaining relationships and building relationships, and that's how we got a lot of the guys that we have here now. We're known for trying to get, guys that are quote-unquote high major bounce backs who went high major and then, things maybe it didn't pan out the way that they thought, but because of the relationships that we've built over the years with these kids and their families, it's helping us to be able to land them later on in their career and help redirect, their career path, basically.
Yeah, like what should have kind of maybe happened earlier, but necessarily didn't for whatever reason. I'm wondering with like your future aspirations and coaching, where do you kind of see yourself going with this, or are you just kind of taking this like day by day with that?
Who knows, man? I mean, I'm human just like everybody else, bro. To be honest, I love coaching. It's fun. I love the impact that I'm able to have on the youth and the game. But I know that there's a lot of things that I need to get better at in order to be a great coach. I need to get better at film. I need to get better at, kind of like obsessing over my job. And I feel like just because I'm on this coaching staff right now, I'm comfortable because I have a whole bunch of guys who are very elite at their job, so it makes my job a lot easier, and I can just, naturally be myself. And I feel like if there's ever another situation where I can naturally be myself, then I might chase it. But for right now, I'm where my feet are planted. And that's here with John and this amazing coaching staff that I have.
Yeah, I do want to ask a couple, so growing up, was it always just basketball? And when did you really know that you wanted to potentially play college and professional sports?
Yeah, I mean, I never played football. I played football one time in 8th grade. That was just because the athletic director there, he made me, and he told me that I couldn't play basketball unless I played football. So I did that, but I've always known that I wanted to play basketball, man. It was in my family. I was surrounded by it. I knew I was naturally gifted with, the height. And then, I found out later that I was naturally gifted with the skill, and something I had to work on was my work ethic. And then once I fell in love with the work ethic, everything else kind of just fell in line for me. So, I've always known that I just wanted to play basketball, man.
Yeah, last two questions because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But we always ask this so what's the best piece of advice you've ever heard in your life? It could be, basketball, or it could just be, about life in general.
Man, the best piece of advice. I don't know, it's funny, you sit here and you think about that and people ask you those questions and it's like, what is the best piece of advice? And I would probably say the best piece of advice that I've learned just from growing up and, being an adult and maturing and going through highs and lows and failures and wins and losses is just give your best. So many times I feel like everybody is just obsessed with what the outside world has to say about your success or your happiness or, how you should have done things. But if you're able to lay your head down at night and, reminisce and think, okay, well, in this situation I may have failed, but I actually did give my all. I feel like that's the best thing that you can possibly do, man, because, we're all human and we all have shortcomings and nobody's perfect. So as long as you're doing your best, man, and you're trying your hardest, I say that's the best piece of advice that I could give to somebody. Yeah,
it's funny because we always end up, I feel like I know what your answer is going to tend to lean toward here, but, for me, how I want to be remembered is I want to remember to be a good person every day and always try to put a smile on somebody's face. I want to ask you, how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, I would just want to be remembered as, Isaiah, a guy who just didn't change who he was, who was just naturally himself, and was happy with whatever outcome came with being himself, I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I have a lot of shortcomings, and I know that I've done some bad things in my life, and I know I've also done a lot of good things in my life. But at the end of the day, I'm happy and I'm satisfied with who I am. So.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you coming on, man. I wish you the best of luck in wherever ventures you go in life, and got to keep in touch, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
My guy.
Yeah.